Welcome to the Poisoning Podcast. I'm your host, Erin DeLulo, and today's episode centers on Angela Kennecke, award-winning investigative journalist and founder of the nonprofit Emily's Hope. After losing her 21-year-old daughter Emily to fentanyl poisoning, Angela transformed unimaginable grief into a mission to erase the stigma around substance use disorder and fight for better prevention, treatment, and recovery support. She brings a rare perspective to this crisis, not only as a mother who has lived its heartbreak, but as a reporter whose career has exposed corruption, changed laws, and shined light on the opioid epidemic for years. Emily was just days away from entering treatment when she died after using heroin unknowingly laced with a lethal amount of fentanyl. Angela now carries Emily's story far beyond Sioux Falls, speaking to families across the country with honesty, urgency, and hope. Angela, welcome to The Poisoning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, I'm so glad that we have been able to reconnect. My first question is not related to drugs.
Okay.
Is it snowing in South Dakota yet?
Yes, we have about 6 inches of snow on the ground. I just actually came back from Dallas, Texas, went from 70 degrees to 18 degrees. Not fun. Not fun at all.
Wow. Yeah, see, I'm living as north as I can right now. We did have some flurries yesterday morning. Nothing stopped. But God bless you all. Your winter.
Hardy Northerners, that's what we are.
That's for sure. My husband actually spent a year before we were married, or maybe 9 months, living in North Dakota.
Oh.
And they would refer to South Dakota as the tropics.
It is warmer in South Dakota than in North Dakota. I can attest, at least 10 degrees warmer every day. So, yeah.
Well, now we'll dig into the serious stuff, but I'm just always like blown away when I see the snowstorm footage this early on in the season.
Yeah, this is the time of year I question why I live here. I mean, I know why I live here. We have wonderful people, but I question it this time of year.
Yeah, I bet. So I want to talk about the topic of this podcast, the poisoning. And you emphasize the use of the word poisoning. When you say poisoning instead of overdose, Angela, what truth are you trying to land with people?
When I talk about this crisis, I always talk about overdose and fentanyl poisoning because I have worked and talked to and been in conferences with so many parents all across the country. And many parents get very upset when you use the term overdose instead of fentanyl poisoning if their child was using something that they didn't know had fentanyl in it. That was the case with my daughter. She was using what she thought was heroin. We didn't know she was using heroin. How dumb are we? I did ask the police detective after her death, like, how could I not know this? I mean, we knew something was terribly wrong. We were 3 days away from holding an intervention when she died. I kept going, what is she doing? What is it? And I had known about marijuana. I had known about Xanax, but she had graduated to heroin. But she didn't know she was getting fentanyl. Now, this was 2018. Fentanyl was not a household word in 2018, as it is today. And people were not seeking fentanyl the way that they are today because so many people are now addicted to fentanyl. So for so many kids who took a pill or another type of drug that they thought they were getting and they were really getting fentanyl, it really truly is a poisoning. It is a murder. And I always liken it to if somebody was putting fentanyl in drinks in bars and people were just dropping over dead. They thought they were getting an alcoholic drink, but really they were getting fentanyl. I mean, what would we be doing? And right, we would be doing everything we could to stop that. We would look at that as murder because it truly is. It truly is. And so just because the legal versus illegal and all the stigma that goes along with that, there's some question over semantics. Now, some people are truly dying of overdose if they're dying from too much methamphetamine or some other drug like cocaine or a polysubstance. Of course, that is an overdose. They've taken too much, or if they've been in recovery and started using again, they could certainly die from an overdose. But many, and 70% of what the CDC classifies as overdose are from fentanyl.
And how does using the word poisoning shift compassion, urgency, and policy right now?
Well, I think it takes the blame off the victim, right? I
Hmm.
think we now see the person who has died as being a victim of somebody else's deceitful actions. And so hopefully it calls attention to these deaths and makes people look at them in a different light where they're more apt to form policies and things to stop this from happening.
Yeah. I think it's going back to, and you may have been raised with this belief because I was, that addiction is a moral failing. But if we actually tell the truth about how some of these drugs are being distributed, people may take a second look at that way of thinking.
Right. Sadly, I mean, it's the tagline for our charity, Stopping Stigma, Saving Lives.
Hmm.
People die because of stigma. People die because addiction is seen as a moral failing or a character flaw when it is truly a disease of the brain. And instead of judgment, we do need compassion. Instead of punishment, we need treatment. And sadly, most people who are suffering from substance use disorder, addiction, don't get the treatment that they need.
And what is different about this crisis now in 2025 since you experienced it in 2018?
I felt like I was really alone when I stepped forward and began talking about this. And I don't think in 2018, nearly everybody
Hmm.
knew somebody who's died from this cause. I always say we reached a tipping point, and I think it was around 2022, 2023, where almost everybody knew somebody or knew of somebody who had a loved one who had died from overdose or fentanyl poisoning. So I think that that's different today is that it's impacted more people. We've gotten to that tipping point where people have to really look at this. Also, I'm grateful that overdose deaths, what the CDC calls overdose deaths, have started to decline nationwide. There was still a spike in my state in 2024 where it was
Mm,
still higher. I
yeah.
think we've started distributing naloxone, and I really think that because of the nationwide push to distribute naloxone or Narcan, we are seeing deaths go down. But it can never be the only thing we do, right? So we have the law enforcement aspect of this, and that's something that I think Republican. We're nonpartisan. I'm nonpartisan. I want to work with every party out there. This is a nonpartisan issue. I think
Mhm.
Republicans really push the law enforcement part of this, but I think that we have to have that. We have to have stop the drugs from coming into this country. We have to work on the organized crime in our country, who's helping to facilitate all of this. But we also have to have prevention and treatment as well, and as well as those life-saving uh, tools that are going out there, such as naloxone and fentanyl testing strips.
So, have you been getting any pushback with fentanyl test strips in South Dakota?
No, we have not really
Good.
received any pushback with fentanyl testing strips. A couple of years ago, I went before the legislature asking them to make them legal because South Dakota was
Hmm.
one of half a dozen states or whatever, or a dozen states where they weren't legal yet
Yeah.
because they were considered drug paraphernalia. And my argument with that is, I just want to keep people alive until they're ready for help. It's the same with people complain. I have heard complaints. I don't know if it'd be pushback, and I've seen social media comments about naloxone or Narcan, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
just let them die. We don't, why do we want to save? We need to
Yeah.
save these druggies and that kind of thing." And I just always say, we just want to keep people alive until we can get them the help that they need. And I think people don't think about, like, if this was your child or your husband or wife or aunt or uncle, you just want to let them die. No. The problem with fentanyl testing strips is that they're not foolproof. You know about the chocolate chip cookie effect, I'm sure, and that's
Hmm.
that, when you bake a chocolate chip cookie, the chocolate chips end up in different parts of the cookie. It's the same with when drug dealers put fentanyl into their drugs. It could be in one part of the drug and not in another part, and so it depends on what part gets tested. It's not a guarantee, but it is one tool that we have.
I just watched, or my husband and I just watched the show, the Four Seasons. It was a Netflix, like five
I
or
saw
six
that.
arc
Yeah.
episode. We thought it was well done. We're big Tina Fey fans. And there's one scene though when one of the friends, they're at like a bar party in Mexico, and someone offers him cocaine, and he just like, snorts it on the dance floor. And his friend sort of approaches him or maybe shames him. My firstborn's name is Burke, so I'm fine with a little old-fashioned Burkean shaming. He's like, "Oh, it's fine. She said she tested it with a test strip," and I'm like, "Well, did you see that? And then do you know what part that she tested?" This is the mom that came out of me, Angela.
Right. I get what you're saying. And I think it's very alarming how Hollywood
Yeah.
portrays casual drug use. In so many of these series, I see a lot of cocaine
Yeah.
use, right?
Yeah.
And it's very casual, and there are never any consequences from it. And I think that Hollywood depicts it in this way, and I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous because it can be so deadly. Any substance you take from somebody else, and yeah, how do you know that it was actually tested, and what part of it was tested? And it is, like I said, just one tool, but it's not a foolproof thing.
Yeah, I ask because I do believe harm reduction has been at least started out accepted in more blue states or more liberal states, and it has taken a while, and there is a wide umbrella or a big umbrella of harm reduction, but naloxone and test strips are definitely more acceptable now. But there are always folks that pop up. We had a legislator here in my state last session try to tax them, both naloxone and test strips, so that he could create like a 1-800 number for people to report drug use that would be funded by the taxes of naloxone and test strips. So I just
Yikes.
thought yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because the cost is a barrier for getting people naloxone.
Right.
And Emily's hope is trying to get everybody naloxone for free. I mean, we want it to be as common as a fire extinguisher.
Yes.
We want it to be in everybody's safety kit. And that's frightening to me that somebody would want to tax it, because how would we handle that? And
It shows definitely a
Stigma.
stigma and a mindset of don't help these folks. We don't need to be bothered. So
that's right.
yeah, luckily it failed. I think he's a rarity, but still it comes up, and these people are elected officials, so you never know.
Right. Right. And there is a backlash with the latest administration when it comes to harm reduction. We have to be very careful not to use those words for any federal funding. We've gone to calling, naloxone and fentanyl testing strips life-saving tools. I mean, we'll do whatever it takes to be able to continue to save lives. I think one of the biggest pushbacks that I've seen out there are needle exchanges and safe use sites. And I understand some of the arguments surrounding that. I mean, I truly believe that you have to have consequences along with treatment. And we have a post-overdose response team where we respond to everybody who survives an overdose in our half of the state. And I think that's really important, but you have to. I've talked to many people who suffer from substance use disorder that told me it was a combination of things, and one of those things was consequences. So I think while I say let's have treatment instead of punishment, I hope that if punishment is part of that, the treatment is included, right? I think, and so often it's not.
Yes, agreed. I do find it interesting that you can't use the phrase harm reduction in requests anymore.
It's on that list of language that has to be taken out of anything to do with the federal government. So we're very aware of that. And to me, it's just semantics. And
Yeah.
I have to believe that most people would support us distributing naloxone and saving lives.
Yeah, agreed. What warning signs do families still miss in today's illicit drug problems?
I think it's really tough because I run a support group for parents, and we meet once a month, and every month we have new members in our support group, sadly, who've lost somebody, who are really fresh in their grief. And they talk a lot about how they just didn't think, like they thought, in one case, she thought her son was just using marijuana, right? But he didn't get the marijuana from a trusted source one time.
Right.
And that one time had fentanyl in it and he died. And so when I say a trusted source, obviously marijuana coming from dispensaries, it's not going to contain fentanyl, where if you get it off the black market, illicit marijuana, it certainly could. And so it's not always about the signs. But when you do have somebody suffering from substance use disorder, especially a young person, the signs are a change in behavior, a change in appearance, a change in friends, hiding, denying, all of these things, just sleepiness. My daughter was falling asleep in public places, and I didn't put that together with, oh my gosh, she must be using an opioid. But now I know that. Of course I know that. So, I mean, the signs are the same, but I think people sometimes around that person, a loved one, can't always see it. Maybe they don't want to see it or can't always see it.
Don't want to, I think sometimes is the hardest one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful that you are distributing naloxone. Where is your naloxone access working? Where are there holes in your state right now?
So we started out last April, the end of April. We had actually started prior to that distributing naloxone on our own, Emily's Hope. And we had a few boxes in the town I live in, Sioux Falls, which is the most populated town in South Dakota. And we had a few boxes, and quickly our sources for getting naloxone were drying up. They were running out.
Really?
And yes, because
okay, can I stop you? So were people donating it to you? Were companies donating it to you?
there was a nonprofit that we purchased some. We got some small grants to purchase some, but it didn't go very far. At $33 per carton was our price at the time. So it didn't go very far. And then we were able to work with a nonprofit that was giving out naloxone to other nonprofits. Well, soon they ran out of naloxone. So that source dried up. And I was talking to our Attorney General, Marty Jackley in South Dakota, and he said, I think that I can help you get a decent supply of naloxone. And from that conversation, we worked with the drug company Teva and also our Department of Social Services and our Department of Health. And what had happened was that the state of South Dakota had said, we'll take 9,000 kits, and that'll be enough to saturate the state of South Dakota. And
so the demand, 9,000 box of two was enough to saturate.
That's what our Department of Social Services initially believed.
Okay.
For whatever reasons they had done, I think, and they had provided it to pharmacies, which also means that someone has to walk inside a pharmacy and ask for it. So there you have the stigma coming into play, and not a lot of people are willing to do that. And so because of the efforts of our Attorney General and his talks with our Department of Social Services and our talks together with Teva, we were able to secure 25,000 naloxone kits to distribute across the state. And we also put those in public places in distribution boxes, which are old newspaper boxes that we've repurposed for this. And anybody can just walk in and take one. And I always say I want everyone to have one, even if they don't think they know somebody who's using, because overdoses can happen in public restrooms. They can happen in traffic. I have a friend in Arkansas who it happened in the middle of traffic. She came across somebody who had overdosed. So it's been really interesting to get these boxes all across the state. We work with the Department of Social Services on that, but it really was because of the push of our AG. And it's been very successful so far. And we have been working to get on all of our Native American reservations. We have 9 of them in my state. And there's such a disparity. Native Americans have a 4% higher overdose rate than the rest of the population. And so there's such a disparity there. And we know that we need to reach all those places. We worked with a grocery store chain that's on many of those reservations. We've worked with, they're called Bowie Foods, and we've worked with them to get the naloxone there. So if someone's going to pick up eggs, they can pick up a naloxone kit. And we've also worked with all of the tribes too, in addition to other areas that are not as populated, very remote, but that doesn't mean that they don't have some similar issues. So different ways to get the naloxone out, putting it by every AED. We'd like to see it by every AED. And I think that's just a no-brainer with a sticker that says naloxone available here. And so I think, and the more people see it and the more they have it, the more socially acceptable it is too.
Right.
And the more it's looked upon, as a good thing to carry instead of something that's stigmatized.
I so we have it in our home. I have it it's on a magnet on our fridge. So that's where the box is. So you sort of know where it is. And then I keep it cars, even though, you live in an extreme weather place right now, Angela. I don't know if it's good at like -10, but
I can answer that question.
It's worth trying.
I can answer that question. If it's frozen, it won't work. But once it thaws, it can work. The issue really is heat. So we try to, so if it gets to be over 104, over 104 degrees, 104 to over, it can degrade the medication. And so we really are working to have our distribution boxes in like a climate controlled entryway. We're in many health systems, like right before the emergency room. You don't have to go all the way in the emergency room. You can just walk in the doorway and grab it. That kind of thing. A climate controlled entryway is where we prefer to put it. I know people carry it in their cars, but I always try to warn them about this. And then also, if somebody uses it who doesn't need it, it won't hurt them. It can't hurt children. I mean, I think that's another really important message to get across.
I even keep just like an individual one in my purse. And I've noticed the other day, and I take it through because I'm on a plane probably every other week. TSA has never stopped me. They've never go, what's this? So guys, no problem keeping it in your bag. But it's so beat up now. I was like, oh, I think the seal, I'm going to have to get a new one eventually.
Check the expiration date. You do want to check that because I think they're actually good a little bit longer than what the expiration date says on it. That's something that I've heard, but we definitely want to replace it after a couple of years.
Oh, for sure. I don't want people to think they shouldn't try it if it was hot or cold. If that's the only thing you've got, try it. But I'm like, oh, this is really like, maybe I need to switch it out to get a better one. But okay, so did Teva donate them, or was your product through the settlement with the state?
It's through the settlement.
Great. Well, I am glad that you got that product. It's amazing.
Yes, I am too. I think it's and I'm really anxious to see what South Dakota's overdose rates are doing. I hope they're plummeting. I haven't seen any of the latest numbers, but they were up in 2024, so hopefully they're going down now because of this effort.
I hope so too. We're seeing that a lot across the nation, and I do think it's definitely because naloxone's available and more accepted. And I could talk. I have several boxes. I think I even have a Teva box back there on my shelf.
I see it.
Okay, you can. I don't know if they're all in the shot. But I want to talk about what you mentioned before, your post-overdose response team. I find this very interesting. So tell us a little bit about it, Angela.
So we formed in partnership with we got a contract through the Department of Social Services in South Dakota to form this post-overdose response team. And our mission really is to respond to everybody who survives an overdose and connect them with the help that they need. So we have a team of peer support specialists, people with lived experience with substance use disorder. In fact, we have one peer support specialist who survived several overdoses, and she now is a mom of 3 and, doing great. And but we connect somebody who survived an overdose, and we're doing that through the help. We're working with everybody that we can think of to work with. So we're working with our emergency rooms. We're working with our law enforcement. We're working with just, any sort of government agency that might come across it, homeless shelters, everybody. We're letting them know that this resource is available. And when somebody survives an overdose, that peer support, we connect them with that peer support specialist. They connect them with resources to get help, treatment, medications, all of those things. And then they'll follow them for up to a year. I think that peer support for up to a year is really a unique thing and something that people really need, because it takes a long time for the brain to recover from these very powerful substances. And so it's something that's just, we have some great success stories so far. It's only been in operation for a couple of years and really off the ground, I would say, for about a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half. But we have somebody who manages that team, and that's their sole job, their sole responsibility. And we started off in the most populated counties in my state, and now we're spreading to all the counties in the eastern part of my state as well. And there's another post-overdose response team in the western part of the state. I initially wanted to model it after Camden, New Jersey, where they have a very successful post-overdose response team, and they administer Suboxone right on the scene of the overdose. The EMTs, the people in the ambulance, administer it. And the reason for that is so that people who are suffering from an opioid use disorder feel a little better after that overdose, because they feel the worst they've ever felt, and then they're more receptive to getting help as well. And so we aren't able to do that with our ambulance service yet. And I say yet because we're working on it, but we are working with our emergency rooms. We have doctors and a pharmacist on our team who have worked to train our emergency room personnel, the doctors, the nurses, about getting them started. Somebody who suffers from opioid use disorder, has overdosed from an opioid, getting them started on these medications right away.
So why can't they administer that? Is that a rule?
The ambulance service, there are protocols in my community for the ambulance service that don't allow for that yet, but it is a preferred treatment method right now nationwide, and I know they're talking about it. So we're just not quite at the stage where we've been able to change that yet, but we're working on it.
So let's say you're talking to a parent and their child survived an overdose. What would be the 2 or 3 things you'd recommend to them?
Well, I would recommend getting them connected to a post-overdose response team. There are other teams like us all across the country, getting them in to see a doctor who specializes in addiction medicine, getting them on medications if it's an opioid overdose, because if they aren't prescribed the medications, they're like something like 70% more likely to die the next time that they overdose. And so it's really scary. And I think that there's also stigma surrounding buprenorphine or Suboxone as well. And that's something that even among medical professionals, there's stigma. And that's something that we really need to end too, because we don't stigmatize people who suffer from diabetes for taking diabetic medication, or people who suffer from heart disease for taking heart medication, even though lifestyle may be a factor in both. And we shouldn't stigmatize people suffering from substance use disorder either. And so we want to get them on those medications if at all possible, and then get them connected with the support they need. That can look different for different people, right? They may need inpatient help. They may need outpatient help. They may need to go to a counselor, become part of a 12-step program, go to meetings, whatever that looks like that will work for that particular individual.
Are there anything you're seeing that healthcare systems should stop doing because it sounds helpful, but it isn't?
Well, the one thing that really concerned me before the post-overdose response team was formed was that people were overdosing, being brought back to life, treated in the emergency rooms, and then just let go. Right. And that shocked me. I was like, what? Like, yeah. What is happening?
It's mind-blowing, Angela. It's mind-blowing.
And so that, fortunately, but they have to agree to our help, right? So it still happens in some cases if someone doesn't agree and sign the waiver to allow our post-overdose response team to at least connect with them. And I always say, if we can at least connect with somebody, we plant seeds. So if they won't accept our help right away, it may be 3 months down the line, 6 months, or a year down the line, but just to give them some resources. And so at least if they refuse our help, the hospitals now are giving them our brochures and things like that, that they know there's something out there that they can turn to when they're ready. But I think that, I don't know that I'm fully answering your question about what they may or may not be doing in the moment, but I know that was happening before. So I'm glad it's not happening now in most communities. I think most communities now have these post-overdose response teams.
And you guys do so much at Emily's Hope. It's just very impressive, Angela. So we're going to move on. We have so much to cover in this episode. Let's talk about your education programs. It's so key, because we can have all the policing of supply we want, but we're never going to eradicate illicit drugs from our country. So we have to try for education and prevention.
We have to end the demand. You're absolutely right. And this has been really my chant from the beginning. Since this happened to my daughter, I think the first thing I did was to set up a scholarship fund to help pay for treatment. And we've given away more than $500,000 in treatment scholarships
That's great.
since that time, helping 260 people. And that's important, right? That's important. But we know that once people are suffering from substance use disorder, that relapse is a part of that. And today, relapse can be deadly. And it's a long, tough road for people to stay in recovery. So let's stop it before it starts. And for every dollar spent on prevention, you save $14 to $65 on the back end. That comes from SAMHSA, not from me.
Yeah.
And so we know it's really important. And anecdotally, the reason why we started our education curriculum was because when I was working as a full-time broadcast journalist back in the day when people were making meth in bottles and in trailer homes and things like that, I helped produce and report and anchor a meth special. And we showed the before and after pictures of people on meth. And we talked to people whose lives had been ruined or ended because of meth and their families. And I had my third grade daughter, Emily, watch that special. Probably not super appropriate content for a third grader, but she watched it and it made such a big impression on her. She was always anti-meth. But she didn't, and even though I thought she'd gotten the whole message about drugs from DARE and from me and from other sources, she didn't get the whole message about all drugs and what they do to the developing brain. That's so important. And so it kept in the back of my mind. I was like, it's got it. Like she got the message about meth. How can we get kids the message about everything in age appropriate ways? And I think the natural instinct for kids is to protect their bodies and their brains. And I started talking to people I knew, and I got a whole committee together of amazing people. I'm talking addiction medicine psychiatrists, one triple certified with children, and the addiction studies professors, counselors, educators, administrators. And we all came together to develop this curriculum. And we started back in 2019. And we started in kindergarten because I just thought we have to get to kids younger. And our kindergarten lessons are age appropriate. They talk about how healthy habits, medication versus candy, who's a trusted adult. We start with very basic things and we build on those. And it's now evidence-based. It's been published in journals throughout the country, and it's in 6 states. So we just added another state before tens of thousands of students, and we are now expanded all the way K through 12. But we started with the little kids because I feel it's so important that we talk to kids while their teachers and their parents still have so much more influence on them than their peers and social media, their phones, their tablets, or whatever. And so and I had so many people agree with me, and we've just seen tremendous results from that. And we're really excited about it. It's gaining a lot of momentum right now. And I think what's unique about our curriculum is that we cover the whole child. So it's scientific. We talk about their brains, how their brains work, how their bodies work, what substances do to their brains and their bodies, what substance use disorder is, how they can protect about their developing brain, how their brain develops. And then we also talk about emotions and pressures. So we really try to cover the whole child, the whole issue. And we have animation series, we have children's books, and it can be taught by the school counselor, it can be taught by the classroom teacher, and it goes all the way. I mean, it was not just like DARE was just this 5-week program. Emily was the poster child for DARE. She read the essay, but she didn't get the whole message. And so I think it has to be reinforced, and all of our studies show that these lessons have to be reinforced, and we have to start at a young age.
So how young do we need?
Well, kindergarten. We start in kindergarten. Good. And I think you could start talking to your 4-year-old about, you don't take anything from anybody. We know that there were some kindergartners, I believe it was in Pennsylvania, who took some gummy bears, and there was fentanyl in the baggie of the gummy bears. And
in Virginia too.
Yeah. And so we know this, and you've seen the fentanyl, Faces of Fentanyl wall at the DEA museum. There are babies on there, children. And sometimes, they got into the parents' fentanyl, a toddler, and I don't know how you would prevent that other than preventing the parent from having it. But when it comes to once a child reaches the age of 4, 5, 6, you can start having these conversations in age appropriate ways, and nothing's scary about what we do. It's just letting them know. And I argue all kids they love their bodies. They think it's so cool, all the things their bodies can do. And we talk about that, playing sports and the things their brains can do. And all these kids are fascinated by their brains. And we have a song that gets stuck in their heads, about how to protect themselves. And so I really think if you start at a young age and you carry it out through all of their schooling years, we will see fewer kids. And the studies that we've done show that they're getting the messages that we're trying to teach them.
And especially with children getting phones earlier and earlier, I've seen 10-year-olds with phones. What's being messaged to them and potentially even sold to them on these phones and apps, it's just scary.
It's terrifying, really, really. And we do cover social media too, and in some of our lessons in middle school, and we don't start our social media lessons until middle school, not at 10, but we do cover that too, and about kids who buy a pill off of Snapchat and end up dead because the pill contained fentanyl. So we let kids know about that.
Yeah, it's frightening. I have a 14-year-old without a phone right now, and every day.
I bet your 14-year-old complains a lot about not having a phone, right?
He's living the worst life ever. The worst life ever.
Yeah. And you're doing him such a huge favor, right? You're doing him such a huge favor.
It's just, they're just around. It's easy. It's easy. They, once one kid has one, every other child wants one, and they will try to wear you down. So he'll turn 15 next year. We're working on like an outline, but I believe with Jonathan Haidt that no screens in the bedroom. Like
at night.
Yeah,
my kids
when they own that, like once they have the, iPad, iPhone, Android, whatever your screen of choice is, not at night, because they will. We had to lock all of our computers at the house. My husband and I have laptops for work, and we had to lock them because we found our son maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, up all night just streaming stuff.
That happened quite frequently with my kids' friends in high school. They'd be up all night and they'd be texting them at 2 or 3 in the morning. And we took the phones and they were in a basket in the kitchen, and got a lot of pushback about that too. But, they got sleep. So,
which is important for the developing mind.
Yes,
very much
yes.
So parents, stay strong out there. They're gonna pummel you.
And I think, another thing that our curriculum, we talk about all substances, and we talk a lot about marijuana because it's so socially acceptable. And I have done enough research and talked to enough parents now that the danger of marijuana on the developing brain is terrifying. And I think a lot of parents think, oh, it's just weed, it's not harmful. And in our curriculum in middle school and high school, we let kids know about the risk for psychosis and the risk for schizophrenia, lowered IQ points, and that this marijuana that's out there today is so much more powerful than the marijuana that their parents knew as teenagers. So the THC levels, I think that's a whole other thing. And we try to address all of that in our curriculum as well.
Oh, good. It's probably, it's hard. It's hard. You can't compare the illicit drugs, there can be fentanyl in the marijuana, and
and marijuana use can lead to opioid use. It is certainly something that every opioid addict, somebody suffering from opioid use disorder that I've talked to, started with marijuana. So it started there. And it started when they were young, before their brain was fully developed, the use of marijuana. That's how it started with my daughter. And so it's definitely not something for kids. Neither is alcohol, for that matter. That sets the brain up for substance use disorder as well. But parents sometimes just think, oh, this is just a rite of passage. And this is something that we have to shift our mindset in this nation about that.
No, it's well, I think it's once again Hollywood let marijuana be just seen as this chill, easy, doesn't affect us
Hmm.
thing, and that spread through the culture. Now, we'll get into the policy portion of this discussion. Your state, I believe, rejected marijuana. Was it South Dakota in the last time?
Well, what happened was South Dakota voters voted, they passed medical marijuana and then they passed recreational marijuana,
Mm.
and the legislature rolled it back. So the
Oh,
voters passed it, and then it was voted on again this last time
yeah,
and rejected.
did.
So I thought that was really interesting how obviously minds had changed a little bit since it became legal in so many other states in the interim between those two votes.
It has just, I think the society has maybe decided that what's being happening, there were several states that were just legalizing it, whether it be medical, recreational, and it was just state after state after state. And then last November, I'm trying to think 2024, what we had three states say no. And then Massachusetts refused to legalize psychedelics. So, which is sort of surprising because it tends to be a liberal blue state and they generally have more liberal or open to drug use policies. So I think our society is saying, hey, this isn't working. And I just spent, right before Thanksgiving, I was at the Attorney General Alliance's cannabis conference, and THC was discussed and how, it is the problems that legalization of recreational marijuana created these dispensaries, but then it created all these smoke shops and gas stations that wanted to sell off-brand products. So now kids are vaping
Yes.
THC and they become so addicted quickly. And like in Arkansas, it held up in court. The attorney general was able to get THC outlawed, and our last guest, not to talk too long, Michael DeLon, did I say that? I may have, sorry, Michael, if I mispronounced it. It's been a few weeks. He was just in Arkansas and he speaks to kids and he's always going to the smoke shops and looking at all the illegal products. And he actually did something about Arkansas where he's like, I didn't find a single like THC product on the shelves. Because when you're
Wow.
serious about, now he didn't go to every shop, but when you have a law enforcement officer serious about enforcing it and you're just a independent smoke shop, are you going to risk carrying it?
Right. So I can talk to you a little bit about
Please.
that. And so we have a youth prevention coalition. Emily's Hope does, and that's separate from our education curriculum, and that is really just for our community, all these activities that we do within our schools, clubs and things like that, prevention to have peer leadership and that kind of thing. Well, one of the issues our youth coalition is looking at, we have a vape shop on every corner. They've just popped,
Yeah,
there's no
I have
regulation.
to.
They've just popped up everywhere. And our AG just did a sting on just five of them. They just picked out five, and every single one of them had illegal products in them. So either it was the psychedelic product or it was a THC product, and those chocolate bars with like the mushroom, that kind of thing. And we are working on legislation right now with several other groups. We're not the only ones, but we had our own legislation, and now we've come together with several other groups to try to at least create a registry of these shops. And some of them are within less than a quarter mile of schools. There are no stings being conducted on them like you would alcohol establishments that sell
Right.
alcohol. And so we're working to try to come up with a registry and regulations of these shops so that this isn't something that we know that kids are getting. Like, we've had kids in our school system as young as second and third grade get caught with vapes. And
Yeah.
we know that often comes from an older brother or sister, or they get the vape from a parent or something like that. But we don't need those shops within a quarter mile of our schools and on every corner and selling some of the things that they're selling, and with nobody watching what they're doing. It's pretty alarming.
It's very alarming with the products being sold there. So good. I hope you have success. And actually, I don't remember his name, but Attorney General Jack Lee's like deputy spoke at the conference, and I believe he said they found someone selling mushrooms that they had just grown in their home, like in a
Oh,
bathtub.
well,
Hmm.
I didn't know about that. I know
I
about the
said, no,
chocolate
I
bar.
mean, who wants
Yeah.
to ingest like mushrooms grown in someone's bathtub?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
It's like it is like truly like the Wild West. These vape shops are really like the wild, Wild West, and not and the thing also that they sell kratom can
yeah.
be highly addictive. And I, as an investigative reporter, I did stories about people who died from kratom, and it says on their death certificate they died from kratom. And the kratom has such a big, powerful lobby with so much money to say anything about kratom. I mean, I learned that as a reporter. They really
Mm.
came after me, but I would argue that that should be regulated. It's being sold in these smoke shops as
Oh,
something that's
seven.
healthy alternative, and it has the same type of effect as an opioid, or
Um,
at both
yeah.
upper and a downer. Kratom acts as
And
both,
7-OH, which is a
and seven
synthetic form.
synthetic. And the kratom lobby has said that they don't support 7-OH, but definitely it's been sold and it's supposed to be illegal in many states, but it's still out there.
It's just starting. I feel that just like the THC vapes, it took a while to start getting law enforcement officers and elected officials to focus on it. People are now focusing on 7-OH. Why can't you just go buy morphine off, from your gas station?
Right,
There's no
right,
difference.
right, right.
Well, so if there were um, a policy change you could make at your state and local level, what would it be, Angela?
Definitely, I would like to see. Actually, I have three things I'd really
Okay.
like to see. I'd like to see regulation of these vape shops.
Mm-hmm.
And some states are regulating, so we have models we can follow. I'd also like to see fentanyl testing in emergency rooms of everybody who has survived an overdose so that we can really get a grip on what's causing these overdoses. That's not happening right now in my state. It is happening in some states. And I'd also like to see involuntary commitments. Right now,
Hmm.
they're in our judicial system. So you have to go through the court system as a loved one who's trying to get someone committed who's suffering from substance use disorder. Usually those are really difficult cases where people are out of control. And it would really be great to see those taken out of the court system and an easier path for a loved one to follow to have somebody involuntary committed. I talked to so many family members who are so worried about a loved one who's suffering from substance use disorder, an adult, and there's really very little they can do. And that is one thing they could do, but it just needs to be easier.
Do you get any pushback on the civil confinement?
We we tried to get that passed in 2019, and the counties protested,
Hmm.
saying it would be too expensive and cost them more money. I don't really know how that's possible because the courts cost the counties a lot of money when it goes through the court system. So we're going to continue. We're going to go back and ask for that again this year. We had some other things that we needed to work on the last few years, including getting fentanyl testing strips legalized, including changing some of the language around our naloxone laws to allow us to distribute the over-the-counter naloxone the way that we are. So we had some other priorities, but now we're coming back to that.
Well, one thing at a time. That's how you have to manage
Yeah,
these successes and policy
yeah.
changes. Now, are you participating? Is the state giving out opioid settlement dollars yet?
They are. And so they started with a sort of a limited grant system
Mm-hmm.
where they were rewarding smaller amounts. And now they've changed that to a tiered system where there are larger grants available. And Emily's Hope has received some of those grants, the
Great.
smaller ones, for the development of our education curriculum, also for our post-overdose response team. And so we have been the recipient of some of those dollars, and we'll continue to work to apply for these grants and hopefully continue to grow our programs and do even more. We know there's a real need for maternal health. We know that
Yes.
South Dakota has a really tough record when it comes to maternal overdose deaths and maternal substance use disorder. And so we need to do some work in that area. Other things that we're thinking of, but just to also expand our curriculum all across the state and get it into the hands, into every school.
Now, what is one sentence you wish every kid heard by 4th or 5th grade?
I think it would be, I have the power to protect my body and my brain. Because they do. Yeah. If they just don't make that one choice, they have the power. We all have that individual power. And we can't control what our genetics are. We can't always control our environment, especially kids, because those things can be around. Our personality traits are, put us at risk. But if they can make healthy choices to protect their bodies and their brains, and we just need to teach them how to do that.
Amen. Well, I hope every school starts teaching from a young age. Now, I like the title of your organization, Emily's Hope, because it's positive.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a story right now that's a really clear story that is, this is why we do what we do here at Emily's Hope that you want to share?
Sure. I named it Emily's Hope because I never gave up hope on my daughter. And I also named her after Emily Dickinson. And my favorite poem is Hope is a Thing with Feathers. And some of you listeners, viewers may be aware of that poem. And I wanted other families to have hope since, my daughter is not here with us, but I wanted her legacy to live on with hope for other people. And I have really found that hope in others. I had one young woman come to me. Her name is Morgan. And she told me that our naloxone has saved at least 35 people that she knows of, including herself, that our naloxone was used on her 9 times to save her life. And she is now facing criminal charges. She's facing federal charges, I believe. So she doesn't have access, hopefully, to the drugs right now. But she's alive because of that. And I'd much rather see her in prison with a chance of a future, of getting out someday and the chance of a future. She has 2 young children. So that gives me hope. I know of other cases where our naloxone has been used, and it gives me hope to know those people are still alive. Every time I walk into a classroom, I was just on the Rosebud Reservation where they've been implementing our curriculum for the last 4 years. And I talked to those kids, and I had one little girl come up, little 4th grader come up and tell me she's lost 9 family members. 9. Yeah. But she gives me hope because she's getting that curriculum. She heard Emily's story, and I have so much hope in all of those things that I think my daughter's death could have just been senseless. She died. She didn't need to die. She didn't have to die. We were 3 days away from holding an intervention. It could have just been meaningless. Like, she died and life goes on. But I'm trying to make sense out of a senseless death and trying to bring hope to others. And helping others really helps me the most in my grief, helps me carry on, helps me get up every day and have purpose. And so that's where the hope comes from.
That's so beautifully said.
Thank you.
Well, Angela, would you like to share with our listeners where they can find out more about Emily's Hope and your work?
Sure. Yeah. They can go to emilyshope.charity. That's emilyshope.charity. And we also have an education page, but you can get to it from emilyshope.charity, but it's emilyshope.edu.org. So that's our curriculum page as well, if people are interested in that.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on The Poisoning, Angela.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. I also do a podcast that's somewhat similar to what you do called Grieving Out Loud. So check us out on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for coming on The Poisoning.
I appreciate it.